What if you were able to sit down for lunch with some of the greatest leaders in the world? What would you ask? What would they say? Welcome to the Linch with a Leader podcast, where you're invited to join us in learning the spiritual principles behind big success. Here's your host, Mike Lynch.
You know, I think to be a leader, you've got to be good at building relationships. But what does it mean to build authentic relationships and ones that last and stand the test of time? That's what we're going to talk about on this episode of Linch with a Leader. If I've never met you before, my name is Mike, and it's an honor to work with you on your leadership journey while I'm on my leadership journey, as we're all seeking to be the leaders that we were created to be in the spaces and places that God has put us. Well, welcome to episode 220. Man, we've had a great start to January. You're rolling now into February, and boy, do we have a good one to kick us off in February. We've been coming out of the coaching month, haven't we? With Coach Madison, with Patty Gasso, with Coach Hurdle, and then we had Brian Dodd mixed in. Well, today we're going to sort of culminate our run with sitting down with a guy who's better at relationships than anybody I've ever met. And it's something I really pride myself on, but I stand in awe of this gentleman. You know him as the connector of connectors. His name is Brad Lomenick. Brad is one of the most unique people I've ever met, in the sense of he is a great author, he's a great podcaster, he's a great leader, was the guy at Catalyst for years and years and years, and now runs his own consulting firm. So many nonprofits engage with Brad to get them connected to leaders. But I'm going to tell you what I love most about Brad. Brad gets relationships. And we deep dive on this episode into the art behind what he does so naturally. So no matter your profession, today's got something in it for you. So I don't know where you're listening from, but I want you to do me a favor. I want you to pull up a chair, and I want you to listen in to my conversation with a connector of connectors on building authentic relationships, Brad Lomenick. I hope you enjoy. Brad, it is so good to hang out with you on Linch with a Leader again. Thanks for joining me today.
I just wish we were in person. That's the only downside.
I know we've been the two places I've been with you in person, Trilith and Puerto Rico. Those are two pretty good places.
We only hang out in cool spots. We can't let our guard down and go to, some low-level Starbucks in North Atlanta.
Oh, that is so funny. So you and I were just together. You put together a gathering of your friends. Now, when most people think that, well, I bet y'all had a dinner with like 10 or 15 people. This is a collection of 400 plus people in South Atlanta. What did it mean to you to get friends from years gone by, new friends, old friends? What did it mean to you to gather all those people in one spot? What was that like for you?
Well, it was an honor, first of all, to do it. It was, I would say, validating of 25 years of trying to be somebody who is a good friend and trying to build friendships. And so the fact that people would say yes to come from all over the country, and a few people from other parts of the world that showed up, it's honoring to me. I think this, Mike, what I love in those environments is I love seeing somebody like you connect with somebody else that you don't know, or you might have known, or you haven't seen in a long time. And the power of those connections is truly, that's the money ball. Like, that's the thing for me that says, okay, what we're doing here really matters, and it's valuable. And if you get the right people in the room, if you get 400 friends who are high-level, high-capacity leaders together for a couple of days, there's going to be good things that happen. And so seeing and hearing people say, oh man, I got 5 new friends, or I had a conversation with somebody that I was really wanting to connect with, and this was the first time we were in the same place together. I reconnected with somebody. Those are all signs for me that we did something that was really helpful. Beyond all the things that God's going to stir up in those kind of environments with, again, high capacity people. So it's, the challenge, even though I'm an extrovert, is 400 people that you know. It's one thing to get 400 people together for a gathering. It's another thing to get 400 people you know together for a gathering.
Yes.
So it was a lot of, I'm pretty good at relationships and friendships, but it was a lot. It was pretty taxing in the best possible way for me in terms of just a lot of energy exerted.
When you looked out and you saw it, here's what I loved about it. This was fascinating. In fact, my wife and I both picked up on this. As people were walking in the door, you were calling all of them by name. So these weren't superficial, I met this guy in an airport one time and I called him a friend. These are people you knew. You knew their faces. You may not know all of their story, but you knew their faces. What is the power, and I've heard you talk about this before, of calling people by name? And that was fascinating because it would have been really easy to high-five them. Hey, buddy, welcome in. Glad you're here. Crap, what was his name? How have you learned the art of knowing people by name, Brad? How have you done that?
Well, it's such a great question, and I think it's a superpower for me. I'm not convinced that everybody does this well, but for me, it started even early in my life. I mean, when I was in elementary, I felt like I knew most of the kids in my elementary school. Not just
really,
not just in my class, but there's always been for me just a real hunger to know people and be a curator of friendships. And the power of somebody's name is that it's personal, And now what you're talking about is when people are hanging out and they're lingering and not sitting, they're not getting into the room so we can start whatever we're trying to start. Like I will literally start just yelling at them and say, all right, Mike, you and Ann, quit talking over there
stop talking.
To Joe and Susie. Come on, y'all sit down. So that part of it is more the fun factor of I can, instead of saying, all right, everybody come on in, I can literally call somebody out by name. But I think there's just such power in recognizing people. And, I worked for John Maxwell for several years, many years ago. And John demonstrated this. I remember so many times that he would be in a book signing line and some guy walks up and it's, hi, I'm Ted, and John, you've changed my life. Well, great to meet you, Ted. What's your full name, Ted? Well, I'm Ted Cunningham. Okay, great. And then Ted comes back 20 minutes later because he forgot his pen at the book signing line. And John's like, hey, Ted, what do you need? And Ted looks at him and goes, what just happened? How did you remember? You've got 100 people in this line. And just the way that you honor somebody through remembering their name. And everybody will say, well, Brad, I can't remember. I don't have a good memory. I get lost in once there's 2 or 3 people. That's okay. Like part of the practical side of this is if I don't remember, I'll say, hey, tell me your name again. Yep. Oh, I'm Bill. Okay, great, Bill. Thank you. So I think the lesson for so many people in this is that the bigger the gathering, the more people there, the bigger your church service, the hundreds of folks who show up to the more you have to be personal, the more you have to fight for micro connection, like actually making it very customized and unique for each person. And this is the power of what we live in right now. We live in a very connected world that's disconnected. We live in a world that people are starving for connection beyond just, hey, I've got 400 friends on this social media outlet, but I really don't know anybody. So we have to lean into that as leaders of calling people by name, of making it personal, customized, unique, very, very connected to somebody's story. The bigger you are, the smaller you have to get. That's the small is the new big. I mean, Seth Godin said that many years ago, but micro is now in vogue compared to macro.
Do you find yourself having to work at it? I know it's natural.
Of course.
So what are some tips that you would go, man, here's some things that are going on? Because I would tell you this. I know a lot of people, and I've been around a while. I'm getting old. So I've been around a while. You are as good as anybody I've ever met at not just having a relationship, but connecting with people on a deeper level. You and I have been together in the same room twice. But I would say, man, I think Brad knows me. I really feel like Brad knows me. And that's a superpower. That is a superpower. What are some tips you would say to leaders that may be leading a school, or they may be leading a large organization, or they're a mayor in a community, and they're going, well, everybody knows me.
Yeah.
What are some tips you would give them that you've really had to work at through the years, Brad?
So good. By the way, I think this might be my next book. So
It should be.
You're giving me fodder for some chapters here. Several things. One is you have to be intentional around taking notes and capturing things. And I don't care how you do it, but you have to do it. Meaning, for example, I went to the Next Gen Summit up in Nashville a couple weeks ago. That is Grant Skeldon and Think Media. And there was, 800, 900, 20 and 30 something leaders there from all over the country. And I post up in the lobby, Mike. Like, I don't tell Grant or Gabe Lyons or any of the team. I don't listen to any of the talks. I just go to the lobby and I hang out, and I'm connecting with people. I'm seeing people I know. Now, here's the practical side of that is on the flight home from that gathering, I'm capturing names and notes. And I capture them in my Apple Notes on my phone, or I put them into Evernote. But all I'm trying to do is find a hook that I can connect back to for somebody the next time I see them. So that's one practical part of this. The other part is that you have to believe that adding value to people is part of your job description. And this is, again, it's another John Maxwell thing for me, is my job. And you said it earlier, you said very kindly about me that you feel like I know you, but also when I'm around you, you walk away better because of my presence. And that is something very intentional for me. I want to leave people better than when I found them. And the only way I can do that is to have enough of a sense of where they are in their life to move them to the next level.
Good.
And this is intentionality around friendships. It's intentionality around your coworkers. It's intentionality around people who are, 4 layers down in the organization. Is whose job is it to do the homework of people that I run into? It's my job. And so to your question of the principal of a school, the athletic director of a small college, part of your job is to be so intentional about the people that you're interacting with that now you have enough to sense, in essence, you're starting over every time, but you're not starting over with that relationship. So if I see you as something, I can say, hey, Mike, I know you're a couple of years into the podcast, so how's it going? Or, hey, you and Ann, last time we talked, we were talking about something with the family. What's the latest update on that? All right. Yep. Or I know you've been trying to really think about the next season of your speaking and your influence. So last time we talked, we discussed that particular opportunity you had. So what I'm doing in that situation is I'm reconnecting the dots. And everybody says to me, Brad, you just do that so naturally. Well, most of the time, the things we're natural at, we have to work at the most.
That's exactly right.
And so I have to work at it equally as much as anybody else. Let me give you one more thing, and we can stop, and we can go a different direction. When I think about the ability for somebody to do this, you have to also appropriately scale where your impact zone is. And there's 2 parts of this. It's concentric circles, and it's also an appropriate vision of your impact. So concentric circles would be when you start thinking about the people in your life, you have to give more intentionality, focus to certain circles in your life, right? So the closest concentric circle for most of us is going to be family. Mm-hmm. And then the further you go out, you may have 7 or 8 different concentric circles that now sort of define how much intentionality you're going to have. At the same time, you have to scale your relationship quotient effectively and appropriately. Meaning this, I don't want anybody to hear this because I have national and international friendships. That's something God's stewarded me with that I have to steward well, right? Mm-hmm. Not everybody needs to have a national vision for their friendships.
Yep.
Most people, the best way for you to make an impact is to say, man, I want to have 75 people in my community that I feel like I'm actually moving the needle with. And that's just a number I threw out. But what I don't want people to do is copy and paste
That's right.
my sense of vision for my intentionality around friendships and go, well, I guess everybody has to have a state or a national or international sense of vision for how they're going to impact people. No, like 10 people in your neighborhood. So if you're, take a mom who's got 3 kids who are, under 10, the same is true. Like, can you impact 12 other moms in your neighborhood with intentionality around friendship and around all the things we're talking about here? So be very aware of the place where you're going to have the most impact. And local, always, I would say this, always lean towards local. Always lean towards local. Always lean towards local. And this is true for a pastor. It's true for anybody who has a job. Lean towards local. My stewardship is national, and I accept that. But I know that the needle usually moves more when it's local.
That's right. That's right. Well, and I love the intentionality, and I love your comment. Even though it's a strength, doesn't mean I don't have to work at it. It just comes more natural.
Yes.
But you do have to work at it. When is it hard for you? When do you find barriers, even when you're trying to be intentional with someone that you feel like there's a connection with, but yet a wall goes up? When do you know, okay, maybe that relationship has served its purpose and I need to move on, or they need to move on? How have you worked with that? Because I'm sure it's happened through the years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I meet somebody new and I can sense, or that I feel like the Spirit of God is saying, hey, like this one's kind of not worth it, meaning my energy level, then I'll just let it sit, and that's okay. Right? Now, I will say this, I am more intentional with people who I would consider to be in the friend circle. If I start to sense that they're distancing themselves in this season of my life, I'm not willing to let that happen. And here's why, because I'm gonna default these days towards, if they're moving away from me, there's probably something going on with them that I need to lean into. And so I'm fighting for friendship, even if it means that they get offended, that they say, hey, back off if they don't respond to me. Because what I'm not willing to do is I'm not willing to let people who are in my friend zone do dumb stuff. And this is a new thing for me. Like, I'm not willing to put up with, hey, bro, or, things are great. Like, I've got to fight for, if I'm sensing something, I'm going to say something. And this is, I think when we get older and we have more discernment, I think there's a spirit on us that we have to steward well. And so I've had a couple of people that something happened where, they got in trouble, they got found out, they had a moral failure, they stole from the organization, lots of things. And I knew when it hurt it, I was like, I remember when that moment was that I should have leaned in more. And so I'm just more willing. I think, both of us, as we get older, I just don't want, I'm willing to for the friendship to go away. I'm willing to fight to that level. If it goes away, it's okay, but I'm not really willing to settle for just surface. I don't want to settle for surface anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think you discovered that at the gathering. I think you got people right out of the gate. You got people below the surface, even with the intentionality of some of the questions that you ask.
Get deep quick. GDQ. Get deep quick.
It did get deep quick. But it was good because it went ahead and ripped off the Band-Aid of this isn't that. We're not here for that. We're here for, and you were very clear, this is not a conference. This is a gathering. This is a gathering of friends, and we're gonna treat it as such.
I think people really want, you can't be weird about this. Going back to what's practical for people, you don't want to be weird, because weird doesn't move the needle. So you got to be discerning and wise and humble. But I think most people are starving to go deep.
Yeah.
Again, because we live in a world that is surfacey. So whether you meet somebody for the first time or whether you've known them for a few years or you work with them, I think people are willing to go deep with you if you'll take them there. And that can be as deep as you want to go with whether it's, hey, I'm struggling with this, or I've got this thing in my life that I haven't told anybody about, or, I've got a relationship challenge with my spouse. My kids are driving me crazy. I've got one that's just out of control. I can't stand my boss. I mean, all these things, people are looking for outlets of safety. And that, again, that's what I want to be. I want to be a refuge for people to be able to say, hey, I'm safe. And most of the time, what we're concerned about is that if I tell you, you're going to tell somebody else.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And you're not going to hold the things we discuss in confidence. And, again, that's something that that's a practical thing everybody can do, is don't
That's right.
hold it. Like, don't be a gossiper. Don't use this against somebody. I think people are starving for that kind of friend in their life.
Especially the group you run with, because so many of those people, we always say, and I think Tim Elmore is the very first person I heard say this, you got to take it up. He and Jeff Henderson, you got to take everything up. It can't go down. And so a lot of these people are up.
They're at the top.
They're at the top. They don't have anywhere else to take it, and being able to share that. And I think the intentionality behind that, I think it was very apparent in that gathering that was a purpose for that. So what's another new chapter in the book that's to come?
Oh,
so
gosh.
It takes intentionality. What else does it take? What would you say?
Well, I mean, I'll give you some of the thoughts I've got. One is going back to, emotional intelligence, going back to the idea that you should have equity relationally with people. And some of us are really good at empathy, and some of us are terrible.
Yep.
So this idea of read the room. Read the room is a great phrase, right? And you and I've been in places where Captain Awkward pops in and they can't read the room. And, they're holding court and they're sharing their idea in a circle for 25 minutes. And everybody else is looking around going, well, I guess I'm not going to be able to share. That's a read the room moment. So the idea that part of our job as leaders is to up our game when it comes to emotional intelligence, when it comes to social intelligence, when it comes to spiritual intelligence, relational intelligence. All the other pieces of intelligence are crucial more than ever today, because nobody cares anymore that you know more than they do. Because I can Google it and I can immediately be more knowledgeable than you are.
Yep.
So the distinguishing factor to me for great leaders going forward is do I able to connect dots relationally? Can I actually understand what you're going through? Can I empathize with you? Do I have the ability to put myself in your shoes? And that's a massive part of the equation that many of us are struggling in, because we've never done the due diligence to get better at it.
Yeah.
And some people are wired that way. Like you're a very relationally intelligent leader. You have the ability to understand context. You can tell what's going on. You can walk in a room and feel what's happening. You're able to navigate with people who might be over here, and you can just tell there's something going on that's weird or dysfunctional with them. So wherever you are on the assessment levels of that, some people are great at it and some people aren't. But I think you can work at it.
I agree.
Intelligence, your intelligence in terms of smarts is pretty much set when you're a kid. But relational intelligence, emotional, social intelligence, you can get better at. And here's the question. Okay, Brad, I'm completely awkward relationally. I have very few friends. I don't understand how to do all this. How do I get better? You find somebody who's great at it and you get around them. There's somebody on your team that's really good at this. Most of the time they're probably in a persuasion role, meaning that they're in sales, they're in development, you can find these people. You can find them in your church, you can find them anywhere you hang out, and just learn from them. So that's one. I'll stop there, but I give you several more.
Who's the best you've seen at it? Who is somebody in the circles you run in, a friend of yours that you go, they may not even know this about themselves, but I have watched their EQ and it is ridiculously high. Who's somebody you've seen that you go, I watch them and learn from them?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example. Okay, so I mean, I watched John Maxwell do it as a boss, and I still watch John do it. Mark Cole, who runs John's company, is really good at this. You know, Mark. Mark is incredible at team and culture development, and people love working for Mark. But he's also really good at it in terms of other people. So, you know, all these folks sort of traffic towards John Maxwell over the years, and then Mark's the connection point. Mark's the one that Chad Johnson is really good at this. Chad also works for John Maxwell. He's been, you know, Chad was part of my team at Catalyst. Brad Jones, who is Brad is basically like, he's been part of Passion for years. He's the location pastor at 515 Passion City Church. Brad is the global relationships convener, connector, developer for the entire Passion movement. So,
wow.
You know, again, all these people who sort of like come in and out of the Passion world and come to the conferences and all the years of doing these events. Brad is so good at making people feel welcome. It's almost like he's the chief relationships officer for the entire Passion movement. And, you know, again, here's how that shows up is if there's a bunch of folks showing up to Passion Conference that's coming up, you know, January 2nd through 4th in Atlanta at State Farm Arena, and you got all these folks, you got thousands of people showing up, thousands of college students and young adults. Then you got a bunch of adults who are there who are VIPs or special guests or whatever. And Brad knows all of them. Like, so he's bro hugging everybody. He's making sure they feel welcome. He's saying, hey, why don't you come sit with me? Or why don't you go, like, let me find somebody who can take you up to that seat or that spot or that suite. So that's how this gets played out is, you know, they're always the people that, like, if they have you over to their house for a dinner, you just feel like you're such a special guest. And this, again, it's a superpower, but you can get better at it. Everybody in the world can get better at this and just get around some people like the ones I just mentioned that are in your world that you go, man, I can learn from them. And here's the thing, you know how this is, but what we said earlier, like you have to work at the thing you're best at, but many times you don't even know you're the best at it.
That's right.
You look around and go, wait, isn't everybody like this? Doesn't everybody feel empathy and they want to make sure people feel welcome? And no, I think it's God wiring for some people, but I do believe truly that people can get better at it. And everybody wants to feel, they want to feel known. They want to feel seen. They want to belong. They want to understand that they have a purpose in their life. But this, going back to this whole premise for us that we're talking about in terms of relationships, people are starving for community. They want to feel like they're part of something. And when we invite them in, they automatically will, you know, we both heard the phrase brought in means bought in. The idea that if I make them feel welcome, and they many times will be the greatest champion or advocate. And that's not my goal. I'm not trying to get them, I'm not trying to create a transaction where, okay, I'll show them honor and hospitality in order to.
Right.
But every time you do it, man, people, they will lean in more. They'll feel an ownership to it. And this is what I try to create at this gathering even, is the sense that, okay, I'm the curator, but I don't want it to feel like it's my thing. I want people here to feel like it's their thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's another, I think, superpower for me is the ability to let people feel like that this is something they're creating with me, not just that they're showing up that I've created.
You know, so there's two avenues I want to take. Number one, you introduced Ann and I to Convoy. So we had a great time on that trip.
Yep.
No pressure. Hey, I got some friends I want to introduce you to. And just a month or two ago, Hal's sitting in my office.
Amazing.
It's crazy. Just crazy. Crazy. All the stories that have come out of that introduction. But here's what I love. You let that happen. You didn't force it. You didn't tell Ann and I what we would feel or what we would experience. You let us experience it and feel it and do all the things, and really created a friendship that I think will be partners with Convoy for years and years and years to come. How do you do it and not force it? So let's take the connection piece of it. You let it happen, but I think there's a part of all of us that go, no, 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 no. You guys have really got to know each other. So I got to make sure I get you and Hal. I only met Hal on the trip because I walked across the room and introduced myself to him.
Yep.
But other than that, I would have never met him. How do you trust, and this sounds very cliche-ish, but how do you trust the Lord with letting those, you think two people ought to know each other and really develop something? How have you learned the art of introducing it but not pushing it?
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, it totally does. The answer is I don't. You're helping me unpack something that I don't. I just do it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I have a game plan or if I've ever had a game plan other than I know this when I'm curating the right people. And I don't mean this as an exclusive statement, but I mean it as an influence statement. When I'm curating the right people who have significant influence, I know that 99.9% of the time, if I connect any of those people with each other, good things are going to happen.
Good.
And this is the power of being a curator, is that my job is to filter people, again, not because I'm trying to be exclusive. Nobody hear me saying that I'm now trying to put people into certain categories based on my ability to have impact or a friendship with them. But what I am saying is that I know my lane.
That's right.
I know my lane, and my lane is to gather, connect, and influence influencers. That's the breakthrough breadcrumb calling statement on my life. It's the riverbanks that I now swim in, and I've been swimming in for 25 years, 30 years, is I connect, gather, and influence influencers. So as long as I'm doing that, then the slipstream for me is filled with people that I want to connect to each other. Now, here's the thing. The tendency, this is connector versus networker, just to use phrasing. A networker, and I got nothing wrong with the word networking, but to me, networkers are transactional. They have the premise that if I connect you, I better make sure that you all know that I connected you. I better make sure I get something out of this, guys. I better, don't forget me. Don't remember me when, you guys are hanging out and housing the office. Make sure you remember that Lomenick was the one. That's right. That's a networker. That is somebody who is transactional in their spirit. They don't have a kingdom mindset. They have a temporal mindset. They automatically think that if I'm not the one driving this, that nothing good will happen. They're also the people you run away from in the green or
That's
anywhere.
Right.
You're like, oh, here comes so-and-so. I know they're going to want something from me. Right?
That's exactly right.
And again, the fine line between being a networker who's transactional and being a connector who's relational is very thin. It's a very thin line, but we know the difference. We think of people in our life and we're like, man, there's never been a situation where I felt like they were trying to get something out of me, but they've always tried to invest something in me. And that's a fine line, right? Now, again, I'm not against, because all the business development people out there, all the people who work off commission in their sales world, they're, the folks who raise tons of money for colleges or universities or Christian ministries, they still have a job to do.
Right.
And we're not naive. Hello. We're not naive, most of us. We're like, okay, I know you work for that organization and part of your job is to connect me to opportunities, but there's still that spirit in the connector who says, I'm more about you, Mike. At the end of the day, I'm more about you. And I do have a role. I have a organization that I'm being paid by, that I'm stewarding a job, but I'm more about you. So this is the power of, if I'm a value adder, then I'm a value adder, period. And Peb Jackson taught me this. Like, you may have never met Peb. Peb was my mentor. So he's the GOAT. And Peb he raised billions of dollars for kingdom initiatives, for Christian organizations. He worked for Young Life, Focus on the Family, Saddleback, Generous Giving. He probably had more friendships with people of influence in America than anybody I ever met. And he taught me this. He taught me that, if he was working for Young Life, as an example, and he was the chief development officer there, he was in charge of raising hundreds of millions of dollars to, build new camps for kids. But he would show up to a meeting with with the very wealthy Christian donor. And his premise was, I would love for you to be part of what we're doing at Young Life, but let me get to know you. And if you don't really feel like that kids and evangelism and camp ministry is your space, then let's talk about what it is.
How about that?
So he raised more money many times for other organizations because his mindset was, I'm a kingdom-minded friend.
Golly,
and I've got
that's so
you in
good.
mind, not necessarily that I've got something I've got to do for my organization. And I just always want to have that premise that I'm here for you. I want to add value to you, period.
I've never heard anybody else articulate that, but you nailed it. You nailed the networker, and we all see. So I host a big leadership gathering. We just had it yesterday, Monday, and it's about 175 community leaders that come in. And we always say, this is not a business meeting. Don't bring your business cards.
Right.
This is a selfish event. Come for you. Now, what that doesn't mean is I don't want you to connect with other people. It just means I don't want you to feel like I've got to network my table to hand out X number of business. I want you to come for you. And if through that you end up with a great contact, awesome. That's great. But you made it naturally. So that I've never heard anybody else articulate that. That was all. That, Brad, I'm telling you, you need to write the book because it is a lost art, number one. Number two, it's an art more people want to know how to do it, and they just don't know where to start.
Yes.
And they're like you, they may be good at it, but they still need to refine those skills. So here's a question I've got for you. I've got two more questions. Number one, every great coach, we both love sports. Yeah. Every great coach, as soon as they hit the off season, always picks something they're going to work on so they can get better for the upcoming season. In the sense of relationships, what's something Brad finds himself still wanting to develop in his arsenal of being a connector and being a deep, authentic relationship builder? What would you say?
Great question. Well, two answers. One would be that I want to find myself in new rooms and with new people, new spaces and places. And for me, that, I'll give you an example. Like right now, I want to be in more rooms with people that don't know me and that I don't know. And that could be in the tech world. It could be in the personal growth and personal development space at the highest levels. I want to be around a lot of marketplace leaders and sort of, I would say like the 1% of influencers around the globe. And I've got to work at like figuring out, well, how do I even get invited?
Yeah.
Because that's not a list that I'm on. I mean, in the Christian leadership space, I'm on a lot of those lists, but in that world, nobody knows me. So I've got to go back to sort of first grade and figure out how do I gain influence in a place that I don't have really any influence in. So that's one thing. The other thing is I said it earlier. I want to be a better friend. I want to be a more intentional friend. I want to fight for helping us get to the finish line and finish well. So that's something I'm leaning into in this season is be willing to have the hard conversation, Brad. Like be willing to lean in, and even if it feels like it might be inappropriate or it might cause some division in our friendship, I'm willing to fight because I'm so for that person. And I don't want to have those moments where I thought, oh gosh, that happened. And now I can look back 6 months ago and remember when I felt like God prompted me and I didn't respond. The third thing is going back to your question of, getting better is what does it look like for me to master my art of curation? And it's the gathering that I did that you were part of, you and Ann were part of, but it's also then saying, well, okay, what other things can I do that only I can do in this season? And this is a practical thing for all of us as leaders. And Kevin Kelly told me this on my podcast, and Kevin Kelly was the founder of Wired Magazine, and he writes these great books. He wrote a book called Excellent Advice for Living, and he says, don't just be the best, be the only. Don't just be the best, be the only.
Man, that's good.
And you and I are in the season of our lives where we're starting to find ourselves as the onlys.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Yes.
Because now I'm at that sweet spot where I'm intersecting with my gifts, my passions, my story, the story that God's revealing in this season for me. And so I want to like lean into being the only. And I'm asking the question, what can I only do? What is it? And that's not an exclusive question. It's a strategic question. Because doing the gathering I just did, I don't know anybody else. I don't know anybody else that probably could do that, and that's okay. So if you find yourself in that place, don't start all shucksing it. This is what we do. We all shucks it when we find ourselves in that place. And we go, well, I guess I'm okay at that. And I just sort of got lucky. No, like double down on your only. So I'm trying to double down on my only. And I want to spend more and more of my time curating, connecting, and gathering the leaders that only I can connect and gather. So to your question, that's even the idea of, well, will I do this gathering again? Yes, probably, for sure. In the same format, I don't know. But I don't want to stop doing what only I can do.
That's right. And I would even say this to you for what it's worth, because I'm a nobody speaking to somebody, but
that's not true.
I want to say this to you. You have been given a special space and place in people's hearts and lives, especially in those Christian circles. While you're seeking to gain new circles, plant that flag deep in the ones you've got, because you're able to do something in that circle nobody else can do.
Yeah.
And for me, and it was so funny. We'll just talk about the gathering for a second. I don't run in those circles. Like, I know you, and I knew a lot of people in the room just relationally through the years, but I don't conference it. I just don't go to conferences. My circles are all in the athletic world and in this sports world. It's just the weirdest thing. And that's where I've planted my flag. And I'm fine with that. I'm totally good with that. I know more people in that than I do in a circle like we were in. So don't stop doing what you're doing, because it is needed. But I love that you're not done yet. That's what I love about your answer to the question is, I've got a new hill, I got a new challenge, I got a new mountain, and I may not end up climbing all the way, but I'm sure going to give it a shot.
Yes.
So that's a really good word. So let me ask you, final question of the day.
Sure.
I think Jesus was the master relationship builder. I think we will all be shocked when we get to heaven one day and see how personal he is, and not just corporate he is. Then this is a future question, but I think it's a question you will be very apt to answer. What do you think will surprise us most in heaven about how Jesus deals with people when we get there?
Oh,
what do you think will strike us most about his ability with relationships?
Man, I've never been asked that. You're throwing one at me. I like it. You're bringing a 97-mile fastball right above my chin. You're Mariano Rivera in me right now. No, I mean, it's a great question. I think we'll be surprised at the number of visible connection points that we can now see based on when we made that strategic connection, or we said that encouraging word, or we added value to people. And I don't know how that'll look, but I'm really bullish on the idea that at some point in the kingdom, in eternity, that I'll be able to celebrate those moments that felt inconsequential or insignificant, that now I can see the through line. I can see the breadcrumbs. And, we all know that's true when it comes to moving people towards salvation, towards saying yes to Jesus in their life. And I do believe that. I think it will also be true with friendships, with family, with moving people into their sweet spot of calling, with actually making them better as leaders. So that's my hope is, there'll be some sort of way to actually see a list next to somebody and go, oh man, remember that one time when, you had that conversation and you injected that courage into somebody, and then you introduced them to somebody, and that led to them starting a business together. And that led to them being generous and funding, thousands of people coming to know Jesus in some country. I want to see those breadcrumbs at some point to be able to celebrate.
It was fascinating to unpack all that with Brad, because I don't think he's thought about it, and he hadn't thought about it. When your gift comes that naturally, you just do it, and everybody else stands in awe of it. But when you can go back and unpack it, you can help others find their way to that gift. And I tell you what, I felt like that's what we did today, is we found our way to a gift. I think that'll turn into a book for Brad of which I'll need some royalties, Brad. I'm just telling you, man, that's good stuff. And man, I have been around Brad in a lot of environments. We talked about a little bit on the podcast, but he is amazing, leading leaders and connecting with leaders, knowing them by name, remembering their families. He's special. And what I love about Brad comes from the heart. Thank you, Brad Lomenick. You made us better. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a family or friend. Leave a rating and review. It does help others find their way to us. And most of all, subscribe, because then you never miss an episode. Next week, we're rolling right back out with another great leader, Jenny Catron. She has a book coming out called Culture Matters. And boy, does culture matters. And we talk about how culture is a system. It's going to be a good one. So thanks again for joining us today. Now, go be the leader that you were created to be in the space and place that God put you, and love God, love people, and use your place and your gift to live sent. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Linch with a Leader podcast with your host, Mike Linch. If you enjoyed this episode, you can help more people hear it by subscribing and leaving a review wherever you may be listening. For full episode notes and more spiritual leadership resources, visit MikeLynch.com.